The war that followed the Council rejection of human terms was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Fleet Admiral Seok Jin commanded the human forces from his flagship New Builder, which was a fusion of human creativity, builder technology, and allied species innovations. His neural link connected him to every ship in his fleet, allowing coordination that the rigid Council military could not match. The first major battle took place at the Helix Nebula, where a Council force of 800 ships met a human alliance fleet of only 300 vessels. The Council commanders expected an easy victory based on superior numbers, but they had not understood how much warfare had changed. Commander Ye Yun led the first wave of human ships using tactics that seemed impossible to the Council. Forces' human vessels moved in perfect synchronization, appearing to read each other's minds as they coordinated attacks. The neural link allowed them to share targeting information instantly and respond to threats before the Council ships could even detect them. But the real surprise came when the allied species revealed their capabilities. Wanderer ships materialized inside the Council formation, appearing from hyperspace jumps that should have been impossible. Shaper vessels absorbed damage from Council weapons and instantly repaired themselves, becoming stronger after each attack. Dreamer craft phased in and out of reality, making them impossible to target effectively. The Council fleet was destroyed in 6 hours without a single human alliance ship being lost. The surviving Council vessels fled back to their home systems, carrying news that shocked every government in known space. The humans had not just survived exile. They had become the most powerful military force in the galaxy. President Jia Young, who had replaced the imperial system with a democratic federation, watched the battle reports from the capital of New Terra. Her advisors were celebrating the victory, but she remained focused on the larger goal. This was not about conquest. This was about justice. "We are not fighting to rule the galaxy," she announced to the assembled leaders. "We are fighting to free it. Every species deserves the right to grow, to learn, to reach their full potential. The Council has stolen that right from countless civilizations. Now we will give it back." The war spread across dozens of star systems as Council forces tried desperately to contain the human advance. But for every system, they lost 3 more species, declared independence, and joined the human alliance. The truth about Council oppression was spreading faster than their armies could move. Dr. Uni, who had become the chief researcher for war crimes, evidence made the discovery that changed everything. In a captured Council database, she found proof that the Council had been deliberately sabotaging the development of member species for thousands of years. They had introduced diseases to control population growth. They had destroyed promising technologies to prevent competition. They had even manipulated the genetics of some species to make them more docile. The evidence was overwhelming, and when it was broadcast across the galaxy on every frequency and through every communication network, the reaction was immediate. Rebellions erupted on hundreds of worlds as species that had been kept primitive for millennia discovered they had been betrayed by their supposed protectors. The Zephyrian people, who had been told they were too peaceful for advanced weapons. Technology discovered that the Council had been secretly destroying their research facilities for centuries. When they finally gained access to proper tools, they built defensive systems that made their worlds impossible to attack. The crystalline hives, who had been classified as a worker species, suitable only for mining, discovered that their natural ability to communicate through quantum resonance made them the most advanced information processors in the galaxy. When they joined the human alliance, their computational power increased human fleet coordination by a factor of 10. The void swimmers who lived in the empty spaces between stars had been ignored by the Council as worthless, but humans discovered they could manipulate dark matter and dark energy in ways that made faster than light travel incredibly efficient. Their ships could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. Each new species that joined the alliance brought capabilities that the Council had either ignored or actively suppressed. The human neural network allowed all these different abilities to work together, creating a combined force that was far greater than the sum of its parts. The turning point came when the core worlds themselves began to rebel. The most powerful and privileged species in the Council, started to question whether their leadership was worth supporting, when the alternative offered so much more freedom and opportunity. Captain Velthar, who had encountered Admiral De Jung at the beginning of the war, found himself commanding a rebel Valerian fleet fighting against his former government. His forearms moved frantically over his controls as he coordinated with human and allied forces using technology that his people had developed in secret. "We were fools," he transmitted to Admiral De Jung during a joint operation. "We thought the Council gave us power, but it was only giving us the illusion of power while keeping us weak." The hardcore Council loyalists, led by the Hegemony and Trade Federation, fought desperately to maintain their control, but they were vastly outnumbered by the coalition of free species. Their final stronghold was the core system, where the original Council chambers were located. Admiral Jin Wu led the final assault on the Council homeworlds, but instead of destroying them, he surrounded them with ships, broadcasting a simple message: surrender and join the new galactic order, or remain isolated in your own systems. The choice is yours. Most of the remaining Council forces chose surrender when they realized that resistance meant eternal isolation from the rest of the galaxy. The few who refused were left on their worlds with enough resources to survive, but cut off from all contact with the outside universe. The new galaxy that emerged was everything. The old Council was not. Instead of a rigid hierarchy, there was a flexible federation where every species had a voice proportional to their contribution. Instead of hoarded technology, there was open sharing of knowledge that benefited everyone. Instead of fear and oppression, there was cooperation and mutual support. Former Council chambers were transformed into the meeting halls of the Galactic Federation, where representatives from hundreds of species worked together to solve problems and explore new frontiers. The same chamber where humanity had been condemned now hosted discussions about joint exploration missions to distant galaxies. Ambassador Tejo, who had witnessed the original exile, now served as the Federation coordinator for interspecies relations. He was old now, his hair white and his movements slow, but his eyes still burned with the determination that had carried humanity through their darkest hour as he looked out at the diverse assembly of beings working together. He thought about the irony of it all. The Council had exiled humanity for being too chaotic and unpredictable. They had feared that human influence would destabilize their carefully controlled galaxy. They had been absolutely right. Human influence had destabilized everything. But instead of creating chaos, it had created freedom. Instead of destroying civilization, it had allowed civilization to finally reach its true potential. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders that no single species could explore alone. But together, united by the human vision of cooperation and growth, they could reach for the stars and achieve anything they dared to dream. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is forcing them to discover their own strength. And sometimes the best thing that can happen to a galaxy is for someone to prove that there is always a better way. The Council patrol ship Eternal Dominance moved through the outer regions of what used to be empty space. Captain Velthar stood on his command deck with all four arms crossed behind his back, exactly as he had done 10 years ago when he voted to exile the humans from civilized space. His crew was nervous because they had been detecting strange energy signatures for weeks. Navigation Officer Krell Moth looked up from his station with worry in his 6 eyes. "Captain, we are receiving multiple contacts ahead. The energy patterns do not match any known Council technology." Velthar made a dismissive gesture with his upper arms. "It is probably some primitive species playing with technology they do not understand. We will investigate and, if necessary, teach them proper respect for Council authority." But as the Eternal Dominance rounded a gas giant, what they saw made every alien on the bridge freeze in shock. A massive space station hung in orbit around the planet. Its design was unlike anything in Council space, sleek and elegant, but clearly built for both beauty and function. Ships moved around it in perfect coordination, their hulls gleaming with unknown metals. Velthar felt his confidence waver as he counted the ships. There were hundreds of them, and they were all moving with a precision that suggested advanced coordination technology. More disturbing was the fact that he recognized some of the basic hull shapes. They looked like human designs, but improved beyond anything. The council had ever seen Communications Officer Zerbath turn to face the captain. "Sir, we are being hailed. The transmission is coming from the largest vessel in the formation. It appears to be a flagship of some kind." On screen, Velthar commanded. Main display flickered and showed the bridge of a ship that took Velthar breath away. The technology was clearly advanced far beyond council standards, but what shocked him most was the figure sitting in the command chair. It was Admiral Dae Jung, a human he remembered from the exile proceedings. The same human who had stood quietly while his species was cast out of civilized space. Admiral Dae Jung looked older, but there was something different about him. His eyes held a confidence that had not been there before, and when he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who commanded real power. "Captain Velthar," he said without any greeting, "I remember you. You were one of the delegates who voted to exile my people. You said we were too dangerous to remain in council." Space Velthar tried to regain his composure. "You are in violation of the exile decree. No human is permitted to operate in this region of space. You will surrender your vessels and submit to council authority." Dae Jung smiled, and the expression was not entirely pleasant. "I am afraid that is not going to happen, Captain. You see, we are no longer the weak species you cast out. We have grown. We have learned. We have built something that your council never imagined possible." The human admiral made a gesture, and suddenly the council ship was surrounded. Energy fields appeared around the Eternal Dominance, holding it in place without causing any damage. The council weapon systems tried to activate but found themselves completely disabled. "How are you doing this?" Velthar demanded. "Our shields are at full power, our weapons are charged." Dae Jung leaned back in his command chair. "We have had 10 years to develop new technologies without council restrictions limiting our creativity. We have made friends with species you never bothered to contact. We have learned from civilizations you thought were extinct. Your ship is not being attacked, Captain. It is simply being prevented from causing harm." Velthar looked around his bridge and saw that his crew was staring at their instruments in confusion. Their most advanced systems were being controlled by technology they could not even detect. The humans had somehow taken control of their vessel without firing a single shot. "You cannot do this," Velthar said weakly. "The council will not allow it. The council will have to allow it." Dae Jung replied, "Because the council no longer has the power to stop us. But I am not here to threaten you, Captain. I am here to deliver a message." "What message?" Velthar asked. Dae Jung stood up and walked closer to the screen. "Tell your masters that humanity has returned. Tell them we have not forgotten how we were treated. Tell them we have evidence of what the council did to the builders, and to other species who dared to think differently." Velthar felt cold fear creep through his body. The builders were a myth, a story told to frighten young council members about the dangers of allowing primitive species too much freedom. They were not a myth, Dae Jung said, as if reading his thoughts. They were real, and they were destroyed by the same council that claimed to bring peace to the galaxy. "We found their records, Captain. We know the truth about how the council maintains its power." Human Admiral made another gesture, and the council ship was released from the energy fields. "Your ship is free to go, Captain, but know this. The next time council forces enter our territory, they will not be treated so gently." As the Eternal Dominance limped back toward council space, Velthar tried to process what had happened. The humans had not only survived their exile, but had somehow become more powerful than any single council member species. Their technology was beyond anything he had seen. Their coordination was perfect. Their confidence was absolute. When news of the encounter reached the council chambers, panic spread through the alien delegates. Some species wanted to negotiate, recognizing that the humans had become too powerful. To ignore others, led by Velthar's own people, wanted immediate military action. But there was a third group that worried the council leadership most. These were species that had always been treated as junior partners in the council, species that provided resources and labor, but had little say in major decisions. When they heard about the human empire and how it treated its allies as equals, many began to question why they remained loyal to the council. Ambassador Hyojin arrived at the council chambers 3 months after the first encounter. She came not as a refugee begging for mercy, but as the representative of a powerful empire. Her ship was escorted by vessels from a dozen different species, all working together as equals. The same chamber where humanity had been exiled now trembled as she spoke. The acoustics were perfect and every word carried to every delegate with crystal clarity. 10 years ago you cast us out because you feared what we might become. She began, "Today, I stand before you. As proof that your fears were justified, we have become everything you were afraid of. We are innovative. We are unpredictable. We are free." The Valerian ambassador who had led the exile vote tried to interrupt. "You have no authority here, human. This chamber is for civilized species only." Hyojin smiled the same way Admiral Daejung had smiled when dealing with Captain Velthar civilized. She repeated, "Tell me, honored delegate, what is civilized about destroying entire species to maintain power? What is civilized about keeping other races primitive to prevent competition? What is civilized about hoarding technology that could end suffering across the galaxy?" The chamber erupted in noise as delegates began arguing among themselves. Some species were demanding explanations from the council leadership. Others were calling for immediate military action against the humans. Still others were quietly discussing the possibility of joining the Human Alliance, Emperor. Wu Jin appeared on the central display screen, his image transmitted from the heart of human space. He looked calm and confident as he addressed the assembled aliens. "We did not come here to conquer you," he said. "We came here to offer you a choice. You can continue following the old ways, maintaining power through fear and oppression. Or you can join us in building something better. A galaxy where every species can reach its full potential, where cooperation replaces domination, where innovation is celebrated instead of feared. The choice is yours, but know this: the age of council supremacy is ending. Whether it ends peacefully or through conflict depends entirely on what you decide here today." The galaxy was changing and nothing would ever be the same again. 5 years had passed since the human fleet found the builder systems, and the transformation was beyond anything anyone had imagined. General Sang-woo stood on the command deck of New Terra Station and watched as massive construction ships moved through space like graceful dancers. Each ship was building something new, orbital cities that made council space stations look like toys. The humans had not just repaired the builder infrastructure, they had improved it. Human creativity combined with builder technology had created wonders that neither species could have achieved alone. The orbital cities rotated slowly in space, their surfaces covered in gardens and parks that could be seen from thousands of kilometers away. Engineer Hyun-soo had become the chief architect of the new human empire. His designs merged the practical builder approach with human aesthetic sense. The result was structures that were not only functional, but beautiful cities that floated in space like jewels, manufacturing centers that hummed with quiet efficiency, mining operations that could strip an asteroid bare while leaving its rare metals perfectly organized. But the most incredible breakthrough had come from scientist Ye Jin, who had been studying the builder neural interface technology. She discovered that human brains were remarkably compatible with the builder systems, more compatible than the builders themselves had been. The human nervous system could adapt to the technology in ways that allowed for unprecedented coordination. Ye Jin had volunteered for the first human neural interface experiment. The procedure was dangerous, and no one knew what would happen. But when she emerged from the builder medical facility, she was changed. Her eyes glowed with a faint blue light and she could communicate directly with the station computers. "The neural link does not control your mind," she explained to the gathered scientists. "It enhances it. I can still think my own thoughts, make my own decisions, be completely myself. But I can also share thoughts with other linked humans and interface directly with our technology." Within months, thousands of humans had volunteered for the neural interface procedure. The results were remarkable. Entire construction crews could work together with perfect coordination. Ship crews could pilot vessels as if they were extensions of their own bodies. Scientists could share discoveries instantly across the entire human territory. Captain Su Bin had been one of the first to receive the neural interface, and she used it to revolutionize human exploration. Her ship could travel to distant systems and instantly share everything she discovered with researchers back home. She had made contact with dozens of alien species that lived in the galactic rim, species that the Council had never bothered to find. These aliens were different from Council species. They were survivors who had been ignored or forgotten by the galactic government. They had developed their own technologies and cultures without Council interference, and they were fascinated by what humanity was building. The Wanderer species were nomads who traveled between stars in ships that were part technology and part living organism. They had been searching for a new home for thousands of years, and the humans offered them sanctuary in exchange for their knowledge of deep space navigation. The Shapers were silicon-based life forms who could manipulate matter at the molecular level. They had been mining rare elements from dead stars for centuries, and they taught humans how to harvest resources that Council species thought were impossible to obtain. The Dreamers were energy beings who existed in a state between matter and pure thought. They showed humans how to store vast amounts of information in crystalline matrices and how to power devices using the background energy of space itself. Each new alliance brought new knowledge and capabilities. The human empire was growing not through conquest but through cooperation. Every species that joined brought something unique and valuable, and the neural interface allowed humans to coordinate with their allies in ways that had never been possible before. Emperor Wu Jin had been elected by the colonial governors to lead the growing human empire, but he ruled very differently from the Council. The human government was based on cooperation and shared decision-making. Every major choice was discussed and debated until the best solution emerged. The Emperor stood before the assembled representatives of human colonies and allied species. His words were transmitted instantly to every human settlement through the neural network. "We are not building an empire like the old ones," he said. "We are creating something new. A civilization where every species can contribute their best qualities, where innovation is rewarded, where cooperation is stronger than domination." The human military had grown as well, but it was unlike any force the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Jin Wu commanded fleets that could coordinate across vast distances using the neural interface. Human ships were faster and more maneuverable than Council vessels because they were controlled by linked crews working as one mind. But more importantly, the human fleets were supported by allied species who brought their own unique capabilities. Wanderer ships could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. Shaper vessels could repair themselves instantly from battle damage. Dreamercraft could phase in and out of normal space, making them nearly impossible to target. The news of the human empire eventually reached Council space through traders and explorers who had encountered human expansion. The Council delegates who had voted to exile humanity were shocked to learn that the humans had not only survived, but had built something that rivaled their own power. Commander Dongsu, who had been insulted at the exile hearing, now commanded a fleet of ships that incorporated the best of human builder and allied technology. His vessels could outfight anything the Council had, and his crews were linked together in ways that made them incredibly effective. Dr. Yuna had become the human ambassador to neutral species, and her diplomatic missions were incredibly successful. She offered genuine partnership instead of Council domination. She shared technology freely instead of hoarding it. She treated every species as equals instead of subjects. The human territories now spanned dozens of star systems. Each system was connected to the others through the neural network and through the fastest communication system ever developed. Information could travel from one end of human space to the other in minutes instead of the days or weeks required by Council systems. Trade routes flourished as human merchants carried goods between allied species and neutral worlds. Human products were in high demand because they were innovative, reliable, and often solved problems that Council technology could not address. Human medicines could cure diseases that had plagued alien species for millennia. Human tools could perform tasks that alien equipment found impossible. The most remarkable thing about the human empire was how happy its people were. The neural interface allowed humans to share not just thoughts, but emotions. Joy and excitement flowed through the network when new discoveries were made. Pride and satisfaction spread when difficult projects were completed. Love and compassion connected families across vast distances. General Sang-Woo watched the construction of the newest orbital city and marveled at how far they had come. In 5 years, humans had gone From exiled refugees to the builders of a mighty empire. They had taken the gifts left by the builders and used them to create something even greater. They had formed alliances with species that the Council had ignored. They had developed technologies that surpassed anything in known space, and they were just getting started. Navigator. So Young stared at the star charts spread across her workstation and felt a chill run down her spine. The maps showed Council space behind them, glowing with familiar trade routes and established colonies. But ahead was nothing but black, emptiness dotted with warning symbols that marked dangerous regions, unexplored systems, and areas where ships had disappeared without a trace. The human exile fleet stretched out in all directions as far as anyone could see. 3,000 ships, of every size and type, from massive colony transports carrying entire cities to small family vessels barely big enough for a dozen people. Admiral Jin Woo had organized them into groups, but even he admitted that keeping track of everyone was nearly impossible. So Young adjusted the navigation computer and felt her stomach drop. The jump coordinates she was calculating would take them further from known space than any human had ever traveled. They were heading into the galactic rim, where gravity behaved strangely, where stars were old and dying, and where the space between systems was so vast that a single miscalculation could leave them drifting forever. Captain Taeho walked up behind her and looked over her shoulder at the calculations. His face was calm, but she could see the worry in his eyes. They had been traveling for 3 months already and had lost 47 ships to various accidents, mechanical failures, navigation errors, and one terrible incident where an entire transport had been pulled into a black hole that appeared on no charts. How much further, he asked so. Young pointed to a cluster of stars on the very edge of her display. At least 6 more months if we push the engines hard, maybe 8 months if we want to. Be safe. The problem is, we do not know what safe means out here behind them. Engineer Hyun-soo was working on modifications to their ship engines. He had been experimenting with ways to make the jump drives more efficient and had discovered something interesting. When they removed the Council safety limiters, the human ships could actually travel much faster than anyone had realized. The Council had been holding us back, he announced to a group of engineers gathered around his workstation. Look, at these power readings, we have been using maybe 60% of our actual capability. They made us install governors on everything, our engines, our computers, our weapon systems. Dr. Minji looked up from her medical station where she had been working on treatments for space sickness. The long journey was hard on everyone, especially the children and elderly, but she had been developing new medicines, using techniques that the Council had banned as too experimental, without their regulations. She said, I can actually try treatments that might work instead of being limited to their approved methods. I have already cured the crystal lung disease that was affecting the miners from the Kepler colony. The Council said it was incurable, but they were just not thinking creatively enough. As the months passed, something remarkable began to happen throughout the fleet. Humans who had been restricted by Council laws for decades were finally free to innovate. Scientists shared research without worrying about alien approval. Engineers built new designs without following ancient blueprints. Artists created works that expressed pure human emotion without considering alien sensibilities. Scout pilot Jae-min was flying reconnaissance missions ahead of the main fleet using a small fast ship that he had modified himself. He had stripped out all the Council-required equipment and replaced it with human-built alternatives. The ship was now twice as fast and could detect things that Council sensors missed. On a routine scouting mission 12 months into their journey, Jae-min discovered something that changed everything. His sensors picked up artificial structures in a system that should have been empty. He flew closer and found orbital platforms around a dead star. Massive constructions that were clearly built by an intelligent species but were completely abandoned. He activated his communication system and called back to Admiral Jin Woo. Sir, you need to see this. I have found something incredible. The main fleet diverted to Jae-min location, and what they found amazed everyone. The system contained not just 1 or 2 abandoned structures, but hundreds of them. Space stations that dwarfed anything humans had ever built, mining platforms that could process entire asteroids, and manufacturing facilities that still hummed with power. After unknown centuries, Commander Kyung-ho led the first exploration teams onto the abandoned structures. What they found inside was even more incredible. The technology was advanced beyond anything in Council space, but somehow humans could understand it. The designs made sense, the interfaces were intuitive, and the power systems used principles that human engineers recognized. Archaeologist Yun-ji made the most important discovery of all. In the central station, she found a data core that was still active. When she connected it to human computers, the information that poured out told an incredible story. The vanished aliens had been a species, called the Builders, and they had been the original rulers of this part of the galaxy. But most shocking of all was how they had disappeared. The data showed records of contact with the early Galactic Council. The Builders had been peaceful explorers and creators, but the Council had seen them as a threat to their power. The Council had waged a secret war against the Builders using biological weapons and sabotage until the entire species was extinct. So Young studied the Builder star charts and realized that they showed systems rich in rare minerals and energy sources that the Council had never found. The Builders had been exploring and mapping regions that Council species considered too dangerous or too far away. Dr. Minji analyzed Builder medical technology and found treatments for diseases that still plagued Council species. The Builders had solved problems that the Council claimed were impossible. They had extended their lifespans to thousands of years, developed ways to enhance their intelligence, and created technologies that could restore damaged ecosystems. Engineer Hyun-soo worked with Builder manufacturing systems and discovered that they could produce materials stronger than anything humans had ever seen. The Builder factories could create entire ships in a matter of days using designs that combined function with beauty in ways that Council engineering never achieved. As the human fleet settled into the Builder systems, they realized they had found something more valuable than just a new home. They had found the tools and knowledge to build a civilization that could rival anything in the known galaxy. The abandoned Builder infrastructure was like finding a complete university and factory system all in one. Admiral Jin Woo called a meeting of all ship captains and colony leaders. "We are not just refugees anymore," he announced. "We are the inheritors of something incredible. The Builders left us everything we need to not just survive, but to thrive." Transformation began immediately. Human families moved into Builder habitats that were more comfortable than anything they had left behind in Council space. Human scientists studied Builder research that was centuries ahead of current knowledge. Human artists found inspiration in Builder designs that showed a completely different way of seeing the universe. Captain Taeho stood on the observation deck of the largest Builder station and looked out at the human fleet. The ships looked small, next to the massive alien constructions, but he knew that would change. The humans would learn and grow and build. They would take what the Builders had started and make it even better. Navigator. So Young plotted courses to other systems that the Builder charts showed were rich in resources. Each new discovery proved that they had found something beyond their wildest dreams. The Council had exiled them to get rid of a problem, but they had actually given humanity the greatest gift possible. The Yeti journey into unknown space had ended, but the real adventure was just beginning. Captain Taeho walked into the biggest room he had ever seen in his life. The walls were made of crystal that glowed with strange colors, and the ceiling was so high he could not see the top. Hundreds of alien beings sat in floating chairs arranged in circles around a central platform where humans were supposed to stand and defend themselves. The air smelled different here. It was clean but cold, like breathing inside a machine. Taeho could hear dozens of different sounds coming from the alien delegates. Some clicked their tongues, others buzzed like insects, and a few made deep rumbling noises that vibrated through the floor. Dr. Yuna stood beside him wearing her best diplomatic uniform, but Taeho could see her hands shaking. She had spent 20 years learning alien languages and customs, but today none of that seemed to matter. The translator device in her ear was working perfectly, but the words coming through were not what any human wanted to hear. The Valerian ambassador rose. From his floating chair, he was twice as tall as any human, with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished metal. His voice was deep and carried across the entire chamber without any effort. When he spoke, every other alien in the room became silent. "We have made our decision about the human species." The Valerian said his 4 arms moved in patterns that Taeho did not understand, but the translator told him it meant something final and unchangeable. Commander Dong-Su stepped forward. He was a military man who had saved 3 different alien colonies from space pirates just last year. His chest was covered with medals given to him by the same species, who were now judging his entire race. Honored delegates, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. We have served the Galactic Council faithfully for 50 years. Human ships have protected your trade routes. Human doctors have cured diseases on your worlds. Human engineers have built stations that guard your borders. The Valerian ambassador made a sound like metal scraping against stone. It was supposed to be laughter, but it made every human in the room feel cold. That is exactly the problem, he replied. Your species does not follow rules properly. You think too much about new ways to do things. You question our decisions. You make other species ask questions too. This is dangerous. Dr. Yuna took a step forward. She had prepared for this moment her whole career. She had studied every alien culture in the Council and knew exactly what words to use to appeal to each species. Respectfully, she began. We believe that asking questions leads to better solutions. Our innovations have helped everyone. Human medical research has extended lifespans across the galaxy. Human engineering has made space travel safer for all species. Human agricultural techniques have ended famines on 17 worlds. The chamber filled with different sounds as aliens discussed among themselves. Some seemed to agree with Yuna, but others made angry noises. Tejo noticed that the smaller species seemed more interested in what she was saying, while the larger, more powerful ones looked annoyed. A delegate from the hegemony sector stood up. She was a tall, thin being with 6 eyes arranged around her head. When she spoke, her voice sounded like singing, but the words were harsh. The humans have broken 17 different regulations in the past year. Alone, she announced, they have developed weapons technology without permission. They have made contact with species outside Council space. They have shared restricted information with primitive civilizations. Engineer Boram, who had been quiet until now, suddenly laughed out loud. Every alien in the room turned to look at her. She was young compared to the other humans and had never been in a formal council meeting before. Those regulations, she said, are stupid. They stop us from helping people. They stop us from learning new things. They stop us from making the galaxy a better place. The chamber exploded with noise. Aliens were clicking, buzzing, rumbling, and making sounds that the translators could not even process. The Valerian ambassador raised all 4 of his arms, and the room became quiet again. This is exactly what we mean, he said. Your species cannot accept authority. You think you know better than civilizations that are millions of years older than you. You are chaos in a galaxy that needs order. Admiral Jinwoo, who had been standing in the back, moved forward. He was the oldest human in the room and had been in space longer than any of them. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the anger underneath. We are not chaos, he said. We are growth. We are change. We are the future. You are afraid because we show other species that there are better ways to live, better ways to think, better ways to explore the galaxy. The voting began. Each species announced their decision in their own language, but the translators made sure every human understood. The smaller species mostly voted to give humanity another chance. The medium-sized species were split, half wanting to help humans and half wanting to punish them. But the big species, the ones with the most power, all voted the same way. The Valerians, the Hegemony, the Core, Worlds Alliance, the Trade Federation. Every major power in the galaxy wanted humanity gone. President Haywan, who had been listening through a communication link from Earth, appeared on a holographic display in the center of the chamber. She looked tired but not defeated. If this is your decision, she said, then we accept it. But know this. The human spirit cannot be destroyed by exile. We have survived ice ages and wars and plagues and disasters. We will survive this too. The Valerian ambassador announced the final terms. All humans must leave Council space within 100 standard days. No human ship would be allowed to return. No human would be permitted to trade with Council species. No human would be allowed to communicate with Council. Worlds as the human delegation prepared to leave the chamber. Boram whispered something to Tai-Ho that made him stop and think. Maybe this is exactly what we needed, she said. Maybe we were getting too comfortable following their rules. Maybe now we can build something better. The walk back to their ship felt longer than usual. Tai-Ho looked at his team and saw something he had not expected. Instead of defeat, he saw determination. Instead of fear, he saw excitement. These were humans who had just been told they could not do something, and that had never stopped a human before. When they reached their ship, the communication system was already buzzing with messages from Earth and human colonies. Everywhere, people were angry, scared, and confused. But underneath all of that, Tai-Ho could hear something else. He could hear the sound of a species that had just been challenged and was ready to prove everyone wrong. The Exile fleet began assembling within days. Thousands of ships carrying millions of humans who had to leave the only homes they had ever known. But as Tai-Ho watched the fleet grow, he realized something important. The Galactic Council had not just exiled humanity, they had freed them.